A major disruption tonight in an international fentanyl operation stretching from China to Cincinnati and Dayton.
Federal investigation results in more than 24 indictments.
FBI Director Kash Patel was in town today saying local traffickers teamed up with Chinese chemical companies to flood our streets with these deadly drugs.
Ohio just became the place where a silent pipeline snapped, not the kind you see on a map. The kind stitched together with chemistry, code, and cargo labels that almost nobody questioned. It started as another routine seizure, a box with a name that sounded harmless enough, but listen to this. What agents pulled out wasn't just a batch of chemicals. It was a key to a machine that had been feeding America's synthetic crisis without ever crossing a border with finished product. Officials won't call it a victory lap. They call it a warning, the moment the game board got flipped. And that's the part almost nobody saw coming, because the story didn't start on a street corner. It started behind research reagent invoices and corporate portals that looked boring on purpose. But that wasn't the whole story.
As soon as the President of the United States took office, he issued a mandate to rid America of the scourge that is fentanyl, a drug that has killed hundreds of thousands of Americans. That nearly 100,000 people died of fentanyl overdoses just last year alone. This was the first time an FBI director has been to China in over a decade and received the audience with his counterpart to address this matter directly. While at Ministry of Public Security headquarters, I met with my counterpart at MPS, where the Chinese government agreed on a plan to stop fentanyl precursors.
The numbers would make even veteran agents pause. They say the materials seized could translate to tens of millions of pills and up to 70 million lethal doses. That's not a headline, that's a scale. But here's the kicker. Prosecutors describe the operation as an industrial web. Chemicals exported under lab supply covers, routed through seemingly normal trade lanes, and handed to local mixers who pressed the final product. No cross-border bricks of powder, no classic drug runs, just ingredients and instructions implied by the supply. Agents nicknamed the takedown Operation Box Cutter, a name that says exactly what they tried to do: slice through a line nobody was supposed to notice. Then it takes a turn. Instead of chasing last-mile dealers, the task force went for the upstream valves, the chemical flow, the crypto flow, and the cash flow. And the next piece reveals how that lab gear cover survived for so long. On paper, the exporters look like science vendors. Pharmaceutical binders, stabilizing agents, research compounds, it all reads clean. But listen to this. Investigators now allege those invoices masked opioid precursors and catalytic agents, the stuff used to cut, stretch, and press pills at scale. No shady warehouse needed, just a web store, a customs code, and a shipping label that passed first glance.
The tactic worked because nothing screamed contraband. It's legal to buy lab supplies. It's normal to import binders for research. But there's a twist. Prosecutors say the companies were selling the ability to make the product, not the product itself, outsourcing risk to U.S. mixers.
We, the interagency, the Department of Justice have been fighting hard to seize and stop drug traffickers. We must attack fentanyl precursors, the ingredients necessary to make this lethal drug,
while keeping the assembly line flowing through ordinary trade channels. And when anyone looked too closely, the paperwork had an answer ready. But the paperwork wasn't the cleverest part. The human link in Ohio was. Two names surfaced in the filings: Eric Payne, 39, and Orion Rafford, 24, both from Tip City, Ohio. They're accused of being the domestic bridge, receiving shipments disguised as industrial solvents, storing them in homes and garages, and rerouting to Midwest networks. But that's not all. Investigators say Payne coordinated payments via encrypted apps, while Rafford allegedly handled storage and crypto exchange activity that paid exporters and kept the wheel spinning. These are charges, not convictions. The documents outline a role, not a verdict. Here's where it flips. Prosecutors argue these two didn't need to touch pills to be critical. Their job was logistics. Translation, timing, addresses, confirmations, digital receipts. The chain needed people who could make the extraordinary look ordinary. And when that looked too clean, the money trail added another layer of fog. Instead of cash in duffel bags, the network leaned on crypto. Nothing exotic. Bitcoin, Ethereum, privacy routes to blur the lines, and unregistered exchanges to make the last mile invisible. But listen to this. Investigators said the network processed roughly $60,000 a month in crypto payments from U.S. buyers, moved through multiple wallets, and converted to yuan before entering Chinese banking channels. The term they used was digital cartel economy, fast, pseudonymous, built to survive audits. It gets crazier. Reports claim the conversion flowed through exchanges not registered to handle that volume, and the funds ultimately appeared as corporate trade income. It's the kind of laundering that doesn't try to vanish, it tries to look dull. And this wasn't discovered by chance. It was mapped, step by step, after a flagged box drew too much attention in 2022. A small red flag started it. Customs in Chicago noticed a pattern: shipments labeled pharmaceutical binders from exporters that didn't fit the profile. Nothing damning, just off. But here's the twist.
When tests showed precursor signatures, a task force out of the FBI's Cincinnati office and the DEA's Louisville division turned off into open case, then into undercover buys that teased out wallets, chats, and recurring shipper fingerprints. It didn't look like a drug case. It looked like a supply chain audit done by hackers. Agents infiltrated encrypted chat groups, cloned the movement of payments, and used sting buys to confirm suppliers. Then it takes a turn. They realized the endpoints weren't in one country. The chemical orders read Chinese. The mixing and pressing read American. The final distribution pulsed through Mexican routes, a three-flag operation managed with a phone and a wallet. The next move had to be simultaneous. Raids hit in Ohio, Atlanta, and New York. Warehouses, apartments, and what investigators called digital command centers. They weren't searching for street dealers. They were searching for the machines. But listen to this. Agents say they seized roughly 139 kilograms of fentanyl powder, multiple pill presses, industrial-grade mixers, and encrypted servers that carried over 6,000 transaction logs. Officials estimate the haul could have made tens of millions of counterfeit pills. That's the physical side. The digital side was even louder. Here's the part almost no one saw coming. Those servers allegedly linked exporters to U.S. buyers and to cartel couriers abroad, mapping an economy that had been hiding in the open. No guns-blazing chase required. And what they found in the filings pointed to something larger than a side hustle. According to prosecutors, the Chinese firms presented themselves as straight-laced exporters of research reagents. The websites looked right, the certificates looked fine, but that wasn't the whole story. One firm allegedly used state-run freight services. The others routed through shell distributors in Hong Kong and Malaysia. The chemicals moved like regular trade, and the names on the customs forms passed automated screens. The documentation was polished. Too polished, investigators said. It gets worse. Reports claim brokers used synthetic invoices and AI-written documents to align every data field with international science trade norms. University portals and lab procurement accounts provided a perfect cover. Real institutions, real accounts, and a familiar paper trail.
Every click looked routine. Every shipment looked boring. And when you're trying to move something risky, boring is gold. The response didn't stay on paper either. U.S. officials didn't just file indictments, they coordinated sanctions, asset freezes, and international warrants in real time. Treasury moved to lock up more than $3.4 million tied to named companies. Interpol notices went out for executives believed to be abroad. But listen to this. Authorities say 22 Chinese nationals named in the indictment are now subject to global asset actions with the goal of cutting cash and killing momentum before new shells pop up. This wasn't a typical takedown sequence, it was a blueprint. It gets crazier. Agencies called it the first simultaneous financial, digital, and physical strike aimed squarely at a China-based chemical supply chain serving U.S. markets. Not a cartel bust in the classic sense, a supplier cut, a wallet cut, an asset cut. And the message from Washington carried a new edge. Don't just chase the pills, sever the oxygen line. Which raises a question. How did all of this hide so well for so long? It hid because it never tried to look like a drug ring. It tried to look like corporate trade, purchase orders, shipping manifests, lab supply SKUs. But here's the kicker.
The network didn't need to sneak finished product past ports. It only needed to deliver the ingredients and maintain the fiction. We sell binders and solvents. That fiction traveled with academic accounts and vendor relationships that customs sees every day. Even the crypto part didn't try to be dramatic. It tried to be repeatable. Then it takes a turn. Investigators say funds hopped from Bitcoin or Ether to privacy paths, hit unregistered exchanges, then returned as revenue in Chinese corporate ledgers. The play wasn't invisibility, it was plausibility. Dozens of small transactions moving like clockwork. You don't chase one truck, you audit a calendar. And that's why the counterpunch looks different too. Officials called the operation a turning point. Less patrol, more precision. Less whack-a-mole, more asset freezes and cyber takedowns. But listen to this. In filings and briefings, they framed the next phase as total spectrum. Cyber forensics, trade surveillance, and financial warfare running at the same time. Kick the legs out from under the table. Don't just flip the table and hope.
They're also signaling something bigger. Foreign chemical suppliers masquerading as exporters will be treated like priority nodes, not background noise. It gets worse for them. The promise is that every lab taken down will be matched by 2 financial networks dismantled. The idea is simple. If you can't move money, you can't buy chemicals. If you can't buy chemicals, you can't press pills. And if you can't press, your street-level game starves. So what does that mean for the people named in the papers? For Payne and Rafford, the charges are severe. Drug conspiracy, money laundering, and continuing criminal enterprise allegations that can carry life sentences. These, again, are allegations, not guilty verdicts. But that's not all. The filings position them as the human hinge between a Chinese supply chain and U.S. distribution, a role that closes the loop on the theory. The exporters sell capability, the intermediaries normalize it, the couriers distribute it. Break one and the others wobble. Break two and the line collapses. For the corporations, the exposure cuts deeper than a one-off shipment. Here's where it flips. If assets are frozen and payment rails are flagged, new shells face immediate friction. Without frictionless finance, the boring covers stop working. The whole trick required speed. Delay is death. And that's exactly what coordinated sanctions aim to deliver. There's one more layer people are watching closely. According to the transcript, an FBI director-level visit to China happened to press the issue, described as the first such direct audience in over a decade. Reports claim it put the fentanyl precursor pipeline on the table, bluntly. But listen to this. Whether or not that visit was the turning point, the timing lines up with a sharper U.S. posture. Hit the source, starve the pipeline, and publicize the seizures to warn buyers and brokers alike. Officials and analysts are calling this a dress rehearsal for the next phase of the fight. It gets crazier. The enemy isn't just the lab. It's the spreadsheet, the customs portal, the exchange account. It's code and commerce pretending to be harmless. And if that's the new battlefield, the tools will look less like raids and more like audits that end with handcuffs. So where does this leave Ohio, the stated epicenter of this takedown? A warning and a proof. But here's the kicker. Investigators say the servers recovered in Georgia and the logs tied to Midwest buyers painted a map that stretched from Shanghai to Dayton, with routes that brushed Mexican intermediaries on the way to street-level pills. 3 countries, 1 playbook, and a script designed to be invisible until it wasn't.
Officials keep repeating a line. We're not chasing dealers, we're cutting the oxygen. Then it takes a turn. If the oxygen is chemical supply, crypto rails, and corporate cover, that's where the next fights will happen. Customs codes, merchant accounts, and wallet addresses. It's quieter than sirens, but the outcomes aren't. The seizures in this case stunned even veteran agents because the inventory looked like industry, not contraband. In the end, the most unsettling part isn't how the network moved. It's how normal it looked while it did. But listen to this. That's exactly why this operation matters. It showed that the pipeline isn't just alleys and back rooms. It's offices, shipments, databases, and ledgers. And if that's true, the next bust might look like a compliance sweep,
that suddenly turns criminal. Officials are betting this model can be replicated. They want supplier-centric stings that lock wallets, freeze assets, flag shells, and seize machines, all within the same window. It gets worse for the networks counting on speed. The more they rely on normal trade, the more the paper and digital trail can be used against them. Every invoice is a breadcrumb. Every mislabeled box is a bell. So what do we take from this? A new playbook, a different kind of pressure, and a blunt message to anyone turning lab supplies into poison by spreadsheet. The cover that worked yesterday is the trail that burns you tomorrow. But that wasn't the whole story, because the next question is whether the supply line shifts to new fronts, new exchanges, new covers. Conclusion. This case exposed a brutal, simple truth. Synthetic danger isn't just mixed in secret labs. It's assembled through corporate transactions, clean invoices, and quiet payment rails. And that's exactly where the fight is moving. The cartels may mix and distribute, but the oxygen comes from chemicals, code, and cash. Cut those, and the street game suffocates. The real question now isn't whether the pipeline can be severed. It's how fast the next version evolves, and whether enforcement evolves faster.